Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. You can tell the primary teachers and the secondary ones there, can't you? The primary, there was a bit of response, the secondary, there wasn't. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you very much. That's better. Now, this is funny. I used to come to Edge Hill years ago, many years ago, and where we're standing now was the football pitches. So I played on here. I'd like to say I played very well, but I didn't. But I have many fond memories, and it's lovely to be back. And I've called the talk this morning. I'm a head teacher of a primary school in Stafford, Oakridge Primary School in Stafford. And I called the talk this morning, One Step Beyond Weaving Magic, Building Dreams. And I've called it that for two simple reasons. One, Madness are my favourite band, and they played at Haydock Park last night, and it was full of 40-year-old people like me who should know a lot better dancing around with fezzes on their head. But we had a great time. And the most important thing here is, I think in schools we need to start weaving a bit more magic, because we don't, not all the time. And I said to Cavell and I said to Becky, you're doing an NQT conference on a Saturday with 2 weeks to go before the end of term. And she said, yeah. I said, you're going to get 3 people and a dog. I said, they're writing reports, SAT's results are out on Tuesday, they'll be panicking, there's coursework to be marked, and they're knackered. And so to see so many people here today shows to me that the commitment to the teaching profession is in brilliant hands. It really, really does. And Oscar Wilde once says, the world is run by people who turn up. So today you're running the world. And the second part of it was One Step Beyond, of course, the title track of Madness's debut album, 1979. And it links into what we should be doing in schools. We've got to start thinking differently. Completely differently. And if you don't start thinking differently now, because you're the future, then we're going to be in big trouble. We're going to be in big trouble. But I don't think we will, because I think the teaching profession has got some wonderful people coming into it, and wonderful people who are in it at the present time. So today I want to just look at 2 things for 45 minutes about weaving magic with children, building dreams with children. And the second one is to have a look what learning should actually be like in our classrooms. And in 1990, I left Edge Hill and I took a vow of poverty. I became a teacher. And it's quite funny, I'd look back what happened in 1990. 1990 was the first time somebody pressed www. Somebody sent the first text message, and the Stone Roses played that infamous gig at Spike Island. Now, there were 25,000 people there that day, but if you talk to anybody my age, they all said they were there, which meant there's probably 250,000, but they weren't. So away we go. Now, I love this. I asked a Year 6 pupil about the future, and this is what they said. I've been sitting and wondering what the future would be like. It took me quite a long while, and when I finished, I realised a lot of the future had gone. Isn't that fabulous? It really is fabulous. So we're going to look about the future, but first of all, this is you, okay? I have 2 daughters, and they're both in secondary school. One's in Year 10. If she's tested anymore, she genuinely is like a laboratory rat. Seriously, it's test. Constantly. Test. And the second one is in Year 8 at the present time. And we went through primary education, and they're in the secondary education, and you genuinely get this feel when they come home at night about the teacher who they are going to have next September for English, or the next teacher they're going to have in Year 4. Because it's important, because you can ruin someone's summer holiday. And this is true. Gino said this, not Dexy's Midnight Runners, Gino, but I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. Yeah, there's a lovely phrase. I work with a guy called Ian Holland, and he says, as head teachers, as teachers, you make the weather in your classroom. That's what you do. So when they walk in every day, are they walking into a room full of sunshine and happiness and hope? Or are they thinking, I can't wait for 3:20 to get out of there? Yeah, and that's what we've got to be about, creating that climate. So I can be a tool of torture, yeah, or I can be an instrument of inspiration. Yeah, which one are you? Which path are you walking down? Because you never see demotivated babies very often, do you? So when children arrive at 3, 4, they're keen to learn. So what happens on that journey? Why does that sort of love of learning sometimes? I love that. That's me. They're demotivated. So you make a choice. And you make a choice about which side of the bus you're going to be on every day when you come to school. Are you going to be on this side over here? Yeah? Or are you going to get out of bed in the morning, put the foot on the carpet and say, I'm going to have a great day and I'm going to build dreams for these children? Because that's what teaching's about. So decide which side of your bus are you on. You're already thinking now in the schools that you're in, oh, I know who's on that side of the bus. Yeah, and I know who's on the other. Yeah, who's been taught by somebody on that side of the bus? Yes. George Sumner was his name, and I was metalwork. And we were doing candlestick things to put a candle in. And he got mine, he threw it in that burning machine, got the blowtorch, and he melted it in front of the whole class. I have never changed a plug in my life, I've never painted a wall since. And that was that one experience. So, you have to make that choice. Who are you going to be? I got him back some years later because he played Sunday football for the Acton football team. And I took him out very early and said, do you remember me? That's for my metalwork. So, and you can make a choice. Do you live in the front row or do you live in the third row? Who are you? I'd love to be taught by these. We might learn bugger all, but we're going to have a hell of a time. Or are you, seriously, are you them? Oh, yes. Probably English teachers, Cavell. No. Here we do of mice and men again. Yes. But no, it's important. I see these teachers in primary schools. I see them in secondary schools. And I see these teachers in secondary schools and primary schools. My daughter runs in at 15 years of age and she can't wait to do drama. Miss Morris has put a flame inside her, and I've taken her to see Blood Brothers. She wouldn't have gone to see Blood Brothers only for a drama teacher. And she's playing Mrs. Lyons in the play. That's all down to one person. Yet she cries when she's going into German. Why? Now, I know German's not as sexy as drama, we know that. But surely to goodness we shouldn't be selling sour lemons to children. We should be selling dreams to them. And it always reminds me of the head of maths in the local secondary school by us when his GCSE results were the lowest in the school compared to all the other departments. And he turned around when the head brought him in and said, your results are low and everyone else. Yeah, I know. He said, well, what you got to say? I've always told you maths is the hardest subject. You know, it's not about that, is it? It's about building those dreams. So, teaching's tough, and you've got to make a bit of effort. Or you can do that. That's if you're impaired year groups, isn't it? But it is about making effort, okay? It is about making effort. And I love that. They're window cleaners at a kid's hospital. How cool is that? Yeah. So think of you when you walk in the morning. You don't know what baggage those children will bring with them as they walk through that door. You might be the only piece of security they've got in the world. Do you meet them at the door? Do you say good morning with a smile? Or does the first thing you say to them, hey, tuck your shirt in, you're not wearing your blazer? Yeah? It's important how we greet them. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. So I'm on about weaving magic, because that's one of the themes from today was about weaving magic with the children. So let's have a look. At our school, we wanted to weave magic. So we came up with a list of things that were about weaving magic with children. So these are in all the staff's job description. And when I'm interviewing for an NQT, as I've just been for September, I said, what does weaving magic mean for you? What do you think it means? And we come up with these particular things here. We acknowledge and we welcome warmly everyone. Not the nice girls with the ponytails who've got pristine cardigans and the ties done up, but everyone. Snotty Wayne who's coming in with the ripped trousers. Every single child is welcomed warmly. We reward the ordinary, because to them it might be the greatest thing they've ever done. We create a past with the children. I remember when. I remember your birthday. I remember when you did this. We laugh with the children. We remember the birthdays and we praise in writing. We also share the world of the child, and when I look at you, what I like about you. Very important. We tell good stories about the children and the staff. There's no invisible children at their school, no average children, no such word as satisfactory, and we steal the crisps and chips. And they love it. So that's what weaving magic is getting into their world. Sitting with them, talking to them, getting to know them. And that's Henry. I won't give you a second name, that's Henry, who's at high school at the moment and has just been described by the high school to me as that boy is feral. What a description to give a boy. He is feral. Well, that's Henry, and he's standing at the grave of James Connolly in Kilmainham Jail in Dublin. And James Connolly was the rebel leader in the 1916 uprising, who was a dying man. And they'd been taken to the jail, Patrick Pearce and Connolly and others, for execution. But Connolly couldn't go to jail because he was dying. He was in the hospital. So at one end of Kilmainham Jail is a grave like that. and it's where the 12 of the rebels were executed. But James Connolly's grave is the other side, or his cross is the other side, because they couldn't get him that far, because they brought him in an ambulance, and they had to open these big gates. They couldn't carry him any further, and they shot him where he came through the gates, tied him to a chair, a dying man. And that changed Irish history. But why I'm telling you that is that's a feral child. And the feral child, Henry, turned to the guide, and that was always Henry's stance. He always stood like that, never had his shirt tucked in. And Henry stood like that in Kilmainham jail, and he turned to the guide, and he said to the guide, he said, "Excuse me, can I ask a question?" The guy said, "Yes." He said, "Do you know if we hadn't executed James Connolly?" And the guide said, "Yes." He said, "If General Maxwell hadn't ordered the shooting of James Connolly?" And the guide said, "Yes." He said, "Ireland would have been a Commonwealth country, wouldn't it?" And he turned and walked off. What perception that is. But he's feral. He's feral, but he's not. So it's about creating those memories with them. So Henry also asked me this. I love this question. Because he was brighter than he made out, Henry. He was brighter. I saw him the other day. He had his top off at the end of the road going like this as the cars went past. And then mine went past. And "Hi, Henry, how are you?" "Hello, Mr. Fisher." That's true, absolutely true. His mum was a policewoman, actually. Don't know why I shared that. There you go. So Henry was always one to try and push the buttons. So one day Henry asked that question, because he didn't understand work quite a lot, and he was into his technology. And it wasn't phrased exactly like that, but it was almost like that. He said, "Mr. Fisher, why do we need teachers when we got Google?" And as a head teacher, I stood there for a while, and as good teachers go, what do we say? "Great question, Henry." And then I went, And I left a big silence now, yeah? I leave a big silence. Because silences are good, because kids will soon fill them, and they do the heavy lifting for you. So that's important. So I said, I didn't know what to say, to be perfectly frank, at that moment in time. And Henry said, "You're struggling with this one, aren't you?" So I said, "A little bit, Henry, just a little bit." So he said, "You asked daft questions as well." So I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You've been stupid questions." So I said, "Well, you're telling me I'm a teacher and I ask stupid questions. Come on, you better elaborate that, because I feel a bit offended." He said, "Well, you ask questions that you already know the answer to." And I said, "I suppose you're right there, Henry." And he said, "So if I can guess what's in your head, then I'm going to do well in education, aren't I?" So he said, "I can use Google to find that." So I paused a bit longer, then I thought, he's actually right in a way. Imagine if I was driving today to Edge Hill, and I wound the window down because I was lost, and I just said, "Excuse me, mate, where's Edge Hill University?" He said, "Turn right up here, 200 yards on your left, up Rough Lane, you'll find it." And I go, "I know, mate, correct, well done." You wouldn't, would you? You just wouldn't do it. So the silence was, the silence carried on, and I fudged my way through it for a while. And then at the end of the year, I got this email, and Anya Marlowe was her name. She left the same year as Henry did. And she wrote this email. And if ever I needed this email at that time with Henry, was that moment, because this sums it up. It just says, "I'm writing this email to say thank you for everything. At Oakridge, I've been extremely happy and I've had so much fun. I've loved every minute of it, and that is so important, but Oakridge has done something else for me. It's taught me to love learning." Wow, she's 11. "During my journey through school, I've climbed mountains, sailed with pirates, invaded England with the Romans, planned the D-Day landings with Churchill, walked in the footsteps of Michael Collins, and felt the pain of James Connolly. And this week I was Meryl Streep in Mamma Mia." Oh, wow. "I've learned the importance of thinking for myself, but also respecting the opinions and views of other people. Thanks again for shaping my personality to be the one it is today. I hope you remember me. I know that I'll remember you. I know that even when I'm as old as you are, Mr. Fisher, cheeky git, I will have that reach for the stars attitude, and Oakridge itself glowing in the corner of my heart." 11. My children left primary school and couldn't wait to get out the gate. So the question is why? Because no one in that school weaved magic. No one weaved magic anywhere. They taught a lot of content, but there was no magic, no emotional connection with what was going on. And they didn't really know the children. And we can't go on doing that. So if anyone asks that question again, I'll just say, read that email. It's fantastic. So this is Emily. What does Emily worry about? She's doing GCSEs. This is a really good quotation from Emily. "I guess I could call myself smart. I mean, I can usually get good grades. Sometimes I worry, though, that I'm not equipped to achieve what I want, that I'm just a tape recorder repeating back what I've heard. I worry that once I'm out of school and people don't keep handing me information with questions, I'll be lost." Now that's, again, very perceptive answer from a 15-year-old. So what I'm trying to say is we've got to challenge what we're actually doing in our schools, and that impact it's going to have on our children, not just in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20, but 30, 40, and for coming generations. Because you see, to be a really effective teacher, you need 3 things to happen. There are some teachers who think it's just about a physical connectedness. They think if they turn up, it's going to happen. Well, it's not. Then there's those who do turn up, and they basically think it's a cognitive experience, and it is come in, sit down, shut up, and listen to me. And when they've done that, at a predetermined time, usually in May and June, if they regurgitate everything that I have lectured to them in my notes, or shared with them in my notes, or taught them in a booster maths SATs lesson, and they repeat it back in May and June, then they'll pass and get a good grade. And then finally, again, that can get you results. But for me, it's an emotional connectedness. It's got to travel through the heart, and it's got to travel through the mind. It's got to be joined up. And when it is all 3, the children fly. Do you know if there's an emotional connection, children, you get a 30% higher pass mark in terms of performance if there is an emotional connection with the work that they're doing than if there isn't. And it becomes deeper and more embedded within the children. You don't get an emotional connection from page 8. And believe me, you don't get an emotional connection from page 9. And you certainly don't get an emotional connection with a worksheet. No child's ever stopped me, it surprised me. No child has ever stopped me in the last 20 years and said, Mr. Fisher, thanks ever so much for that worksheet, it's changed my life. I was at a time with the Bander machine. Do you remember the Bander machine? You won't remember, anyone remember the Bander? You won't remember the Bander, you've got photocopiers now. There was a Bander machine. If you ever felt down, go in the Bander queue. It was a big barrel thing full of ink that was probably as toxic as anything. But if you got the back of the queue and you felt down, you left 9 high as a kite. And you didn't used to wind it like this, you wound it round and out came hundreds of these worksheets and whatever. So there must be that emotional connectedness. But of course there's a battle going on. And this is the battle that you've got to really come to terms with, that we've got to come to terms with, that we all have to think about. And the battle is this. It's about getting results versus profound learning. Now, as I said earlier with the previous slide about getting results, it's shallow learning. You give them knowledge, they'll regurgitate it, and they will get themselves, a decent marks, decent results. But it's very shallow. What they knew then, they won't know tomorrow. They won't remember it. Profound learning, now that's different. Profound learning is they've got the knowledge, and then they're starting to apply it. What I can do in maths, I can do in science. What I've learnt in history, I can see why the world is now set up as it is in geography. It's about making those links. When they've got the knowledge and they've got the understanding and they're starting to make application and then they're into synthesis, then you have got profound and deep learning. Primary schools, we've never had an opportunity like we've got now for joined up thinking. Don't anyone tell you that we are delivering a content-driven curriculum. We're not. There are certain key things they need to know. Of course there are. But the cage is open for the first time and teachers should be thinking for themselves. It's different at secondary, but primary, there's no excuse that we don't get that profound learning anymore. The curriculum should be totally and utterly joined. It really should. And knowledge, when they've got that, then they start to get wisdom, and that sort of creates the kind of human being they are. I mean, knowledge is knowing that a tomato's a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that you don't put it in a fruit salad. So that's the type of people we want. It's true. Now, we're into this now, prescription, or are we into child-led learning? Every child who comes to school will bring with them their own curriculum, whatever that may be. And we need to find out what that is and start weaving that magic with them. So prescription, as I've said earlier, the cage is open, particularly for primary schools. It isn't a prescribed curriculum. There is so much freedom now. Start thinking, start joining it up. Then we've got the play it safers against the threshold adventurers. Now they are, if I do a golf analogy, I don't care what course I'm on and I'm rubbish at golf. If I've got 450 yards to go, if there's water, trees, I don't care what it is, I'm going to get the big fat driver out and I'm going to have a go. 9 times out of 10, it's in the trees, it's in the water, but I'm having a threshold adventure. Rather than a little 7-iron down there pootling about. It's about doing things different. And a threshold adventure, there's a lovely quotation, and I think it was Steiner who came up with this quotation. And Steiner said, "A lust for knowledge and an ache for understanding are incised in the best of men, as is the calling of the teacher. There is no craft more privileged to awaken in another human being dreams and passions above one's own, to induce in others a love for which one loves, to make of one's inward presence their future. This is a threshold adventure like no other." And I think that's such an important quotation. Now, what do I mean about that? A lovely example this week was a girl called Lucy McCann who came to our school 10 years ago. Lucy McCann has just had her first fashion designs published in Vogue. She came back to school to find the art teacher Liz Holland. And she said to Liz Holland, with Vogue magazine in hand, "Thank you. I could only do that because of you. Because you taught me to love art and you taught me to love design and technology." Now that's what it's about. I think that is wonderful. And then we've got satisfaction. Well, we haven't got that anymore, have we? It requires improvement. Teaching or good teaching. If you can ratchet everything up to good teaching, you actually improve your results by 15%. So we don't have to go outstanding. If we can just get all our lessons good, linking all these things about profound learning in there, we can ratchet it up there. And then finally, are we preparing children for a test? Or are we preparing children for life? Now let me introduce you to somebody. I'm going to introduce you to Matt. Matt's world. Go on, Matt, where are you? There he is. He's a great dancer. Watch the bike, Matt. Off you go when you're ready. So I'll introduce you to Matt. Matt's world will be ruled by India, Brazil, Russia, and China. Before Matt's 40th birthday, the Chinese economy will have overtaken that of the United States. So why do we teach them French in primary schools? You know in his world, he will see 200 years of development in one single year. If Matt goes to university, most of what he learnt in year one will be completely out of date the day he leaves. If Matt reads a quality newspaper for 7 days, he will have come across more information than he would in his lifetime if he'd have lived in the 19th century. Matt's going to live on average until he's 95. And did you know that scientists believe that the first person to live until they're 200 will be born in the next 10 years? And that's why there's a pensions crisis, and that's why you're all going to be working till you're 75. So make sure you do something about it. Matt's going to be running around the beach when he's 80, powered by living body parts imported from abroad. He's never going to die of malaria because scientists have just produced a mosquito that when it bites you, it vaccinates you. If he stays at school until he's 18, he's going to have between 30 and 40 jobs. There's no longer a job for life for Matt, just a job for the life of the project. Look at that there, isn't that great career? The competition for jobs, the pool of employees, because of the internet, is 5 times more than it was 20 years ago. The danger from groups such as the Zippers in India, young people in their 20s who really get economics, they take risks and they're ready to take over the world. Matt's going to meet his future partner online, as will 90% of young people in the next 40 years. There'll be no more Wednesday nights in the bar, trawling for a beloved, drunk. And for his 40th birthday, he's going to get a laptop that is more powerful than the combined brain power of the human race. Matt doesn't use email. He leaves that to old fogies like me. And like 96% of his generation, he runs a large social network. You know, to reach 50 million users, it took radio 38 years. It took television 13 years, and it took the internet 4 years. But Facebook, it reached 100 million users in just 9 months. And like half the teenage population, he can text with his eyes closed. Matt doesn't want to own a piece of the world, he just wants to visit it. And he's a minimalist, like many of his age will be. A laptop, a mobile phone, a passport, and a change of underwear, and he's off. Every book he will ever need will be fitted on a 2-inch square tablet. Yeah, every book he will ever need for the rest of his life. And he's going to take his own children to museums. And you know what he's going to find there? Pens, pencils, paper, whiteboards, interactive whiteboards, and maybe the odd stuffed teacher. But he's got some questions for us, and these are the questions that we need to think about. When will school stop being about the memorization of just facts? Knowing what is not the most important thing anymore. Why is curricular delivery linear when my brain doesn't work that way? Why is learning delivered in fragmented periods, driven by the sound of bells? When will you see me as Matt, and not year 6, or year 11, or the boys or the girls, or the EAL children, the ethnic minority children, or the pupil premium children? And when will you stop linking my attainment to my chronological age? It's no longer acceptable or good enough to deliver education in this way. As Tim Brighouse said, the literate and numerate children of the 21st century won't be those who can read, won't be those who can write, they'll be those who are able to learn. And that is our challenge. He's a good dancer though, isn't he? I like Matt. So, what does that say for us? It says this, since we cannot know what knowledge will be needed in the future, it is senseless to try and teach it in advance. Instead, our job must be to turn out young people who love learning so much and who learn so well that they will be able to learn whatever needs to be learned. I think that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. If you watch the BBC News this morning, there's a big survey saying that the curriculum is so narrow now because of the testing culture that we're in. This will send our schools backwards, without a shadow of a doubt. In times of change, learners will inherit the earth, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. And I saw this morning on the BBC News the first cyborg creature. Did anyone see it? If you watch Click on the news, not that I ever really watch Click, a cockroach that they've implanted into its brain. They can put something into its brain, and they get a remote control like this, and you do that, and the cockroach goes right. You do that, it goes left, it goes forward, it goes back. Unbelievable. Now that's the world that we're bringing our children into, and we need these creative thinkers. Right, let's have a look what's going on in our classrooms. Here are the top 3 things, you might recognise this, are going on in your classrooms today. Number 1, have a class discussion. Yeah, it's quite sexy, have a discussion. Don't know what about, but we'll have one. 2 people will be involved in it. The other 8 will be looking at the lawnmower outside, wishing they could have a go. Then there's copy from a board. It's still, on a Mori poll, this was still the second most popular activity in a classroom. Copy from a board. Number 3, listen to a teacher talk for a long time. Maybe there were some questions in there. Maybe there weren't. But again, if we're asking questions, what sort of questions are we actually asking? When we plan those questions, it's almost like a machine gun approach. I've planned 100 questions to ask in maths on Monday morning, and we will answer them. So it's about thinking the type of questions in there. And then we go to the next 3. Take notes. Okay. Take notes while the teacher talks. Think quietly on my own. Yeah, all right. That's work in a group to solve a problem. And finally, learn things about the real world, work on a computer, and talk about my work with a teacher. Now have a look at those 9 there. Just give you, because I'm a good teacher, I'll give you a little bit of thinking time. Which one of those has the biggest impact on on children's learning? Anyone want to have a guess? Anyone have a guess? Somebody said it there. Be confident. They said the last one. Yes, it's this one. Talk about my work with a teacher. Talk about their work with a teacher. Children are crying out to sit down one-to-one or a group of them, 3 or 4, and talk about that. When we talk about work individually or with a small group, the feedback we give them takes their learning onto a different level. We've got a huge issue at the moment, and I haven't got the answer to this. Marking. It's having Well, you know why we all do it, don't you? Because it's in the Ofsted framework, isn't it? Let's mark to within an inch of our life, get them to put a comment underneath, and we'll all get a nice Ofsted grade. Yeah? Impact on learning is negligible. And we've got to rethink that. I listened to Dylan William, absolute brilliance in terms of assessment for learning, and his current research is saying the same now. We've got to do more of this, and only 25% of children's work should be marked, but it should be marked very, very deeply. And it should be fed back one-to-one. And he looks at a whole range of ways to do that, but that's for another day. But interesting enough, he did say one thing, and I love that he said, if the recipient isn't doing more work than the donor, in terms of marking, then it's not worth doing. Really interesting point. But how have we got to this? You know why we've got to this? Because we are a really conscientious profession. We work hard, we plan hard, and we plan that work in our PPA or on a Sunday, as I used to. Well, maybe not. And you're going to listen to it because I've planned it, and it's not up for grabs, and it's not negotiable. But if we over-plan, I still don't think how you can plan for Wednesday on a Sunday. You can't. Weekly plans, how can you do weekly plans? You don't know what's going to go on because you stifle creativity immediately. You kill it dead. You kill it dead. So I think there's another issue to do with that. Because we've got to a point, I love this, it's called single loop learning. I got this from the master's degree at Liverpool University. It's fabulous. We live in a single loop world, okay? And a single loop world is lovely because we have a mental model of what's going to happen. And we've got this mental model. So when we got this mental model, we plan some action. And that action will do something about the mental model. And then we get an outcome from that based on this wonderful action that we've done. Okay? So let's take a classic primary example to start with. We've got a mental model, playgrounds, or playtime is carnage. Okay? Carnage. And we always wonder why it's carnage when we've sort of been these interactive, wonderful lessons for an hour with the children, and all of a sudden we throw them out onto a bit of concrete and tarmac and say, get on with it. Well, you wonder why it's carnage. So we've got this mental model. So what we do is, there's trouble at playtime. So what do? Ban toast. We'll ban toast and that'll solve the problem. So the interesting thing is when the outcome isn't what we expected. So we ban toast, yeah, and guess what? We've still got horrible playtimes. So do you know what we do next? What's the second thing that we do at playtimes, particularly in primary schools? Ban the football! We'll ban the football, because that's the root of the problem. The boys are over here saying, well, we haven't caused a bloody problem, it's them. Now you've got 22 irate boys who are wandering around with their hands in their pockets with bugger all to do. They can't even go and get toast because you've banned that. So you've now got two disgruntled groups because we're on this single loop. Playtime's a problem, ban toast. Guess what? Playtime's still a problem. Right, more action, ban the ball. It's still a problem because we're stuck in a single loop. Okay, so let's rethink it. Playtime's a problem. Right, whoa, okay, let's reflect. Why is playtime a problem? Well, to start with, we've actually got 150 on the playground. There's only room for 60. Oh, tell you what then, why don't we split the playtimes? Oh, that's a good idea. You know the kids with the ball? Yeah, why don't we just put a fence about that eye there? They can have a ball zone. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And all of a sudden, you've got a perfect playtime. But we don't, and it's the same with learning. What we do is, our level 4s in maths aren't high enough. Do you know what we're going to do then? We're going to take them out of art and PE, and what we're going to give them? More maths. Yeah? Unbelievable. There's a wonderful video called Kid B, about secondary school pupils. It's fantastic. You've done it on YouTube, Kid B, watch it. It's fabulous. True story. And we just throw more mud and hope that more mud is going to stick. And why do we do this in year 6? Or why is my daughter doing extra science lessons at the moment? Well, because she did bugger all revision in her mock. But why is she having to go in at 8 o'clock to do more? Surely what we should be doing in that period of time throughout year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We need to remodel what we're doing. Rethink it rather than throwing more mud at the same problem. So it's about changing mental models. And the way we do that is called double loop thinking. But we're locked in, the human race is locked into this single loop. So let's have a look at some double loop thinking, because I love this. This is single loop thinking when it goes horribly wrong, okay? This is where my brother lives, or not far from where he lives. It's a harbour in Southern Ireland, and a car's gone into the harbour. No one's been hurt, no one's been killed, no one's been injured, but the insurance company won't pay out until the car is brought back out. So what do? We send for a crane. Good idea. So there's the crane. The crane comes as usual. We have an audience watching. Men love watching cranes and diggers. And out comes the car. We'll put on the low loader and we'll be away. Problem solved. Now that's unexpected, isn't it? Houston, we now have a problem. So what are we going to do? Well, because we're humans, yeah, what we'll do is we'll have a meeting. Here we are, all the men. We're all having a meeting, yeah, because we know how to do it. The women have got great ideas over there, but it's a men's job to get this out of the water. So they have a meeting, and what do? Because we're single loop learners, we send for a bigger crane. Yeah, not a problem. We'll get the car out because it's easy. We've got a bigger crane now. We're going to put it on the low loader and away we go. I tell you what, while we're there, let's get the crane out as well. And then we've got 2 birds with 1 stone. Oh, now we're in serious trouble, aren't we? Single loop. What do you think we do then now? We're going to get a bigger crane. Now, just reflect for a moment. That's funny, yeah? But think about you as a teacher. If the learning hasn't taken place, right? Step back and have a think why. Was it the way that we delivered it? Rather than, let's just do more of the same. And we've got to have more reflective practitioners like that, yeah. Now, I love this one because this next one is true. There's a bloke, and he was having marriage problems, and his marriage problems were quite simple because his wife kept going on at him that he kept leaving the coffee cups on the table without a coaster, yeah? If that's the only problem you've got in your marriage, you're doing really well. And so this is single loop thinking, it's double loop thinking. He rethought it. I don't like putting coasters out because I can never find them. Do you know what? I'm going to invent a cup that's got a built-in coaster. And we're away. Double loop thinking. So as teachers, we've got to be into that double loop thinking. Now, why have we got to be into double loop thinking? Because as I said, we're being left behind. I heard a quotation the other day. There are children in school now. They called it the call centres and now the factories of the 21st century in Britain. And he said, the children in our schools, unless we rethink the way that we do learning in our schools, we will be the call centres for India, China and Brazil. Now that's scary if we carry on the way we are. So let's have a look where we are right now. There's 7 billion people on the earth. 5 billion of these are adults. 3 billion people want to work. 90% of these want to work full-time. And as a consequence, 2.7 billion full-time formal jobs are wanted, with only 1.2 billion full-time formal jobs available. A shortfall of 1.5 billion jobs. So for every UK worker, there are 50 people who would like their job. Now look at Matt. Yeah, his generation will be visiting everywhere. They will have, was it between 20 and 30 jobs? There's no longer a job for life, it's a job for the time of the project. And because of Google, because of the internet, because of social networking, jobs are now being offshored. There was the first operation which took place in the UK last year, which was actually, the surgeon was in America, but the operation took place in Birmingham. Wow. So we're into scary times and we need to rethink it. So the future, what are the future jobs? Just out of interest, I love that. Look at this, personal brander. These are the top 10 jobs of the future. In fact, these are the top 10 jobs of the future about 4 or 5 years ago. These jobs are now happening. Personal brander is someone who manages your online reputation. William Hague had this issue. He turned up at the Tory party conference 4 years ago and he had a young lad with him who was his aide. The receptionist put it on Twitter. William Hague's just arrived and gone to his bedroom with a young boy. It went viral. Viral. What did he do? He had a spin doctor to re-spin the story for him. There was nothing in it. It was his aide helping him write a speech. But that's what we will all be having. Number 2, a body part maker. We talked about that. When Matt gets to 80, he'll be running around the beach with body parts made from living human parts from all over the world. So a body part maker. 3, space pilots, tour guides and architects. It's happening. 4, oh, I could do with this. A memory augmentation surgeon. Surgeons will boost patients' memory when it hits capacity. We'll plug ourselves in and we'll have a bigger memory. That has happened with the cockroach today. First cyborg creature. And they're developing these creatures because they can withstand going into nuclear zones and so forth like that and retrieving things or whatever they can do. Whatever a cockroach is capable of doing, apart from annoying us. And there's the weather police. Well, we know that they're going into Qatar. trying to create a cooler climate for the World Cup. And vertical farmers, yeah, because we're running out of land, farms are now vertical. And a time broker, a time bank trader, what's more valuable than precious metal, stones or gold, hard cash or your time? There's a guy in America, I find this really sad. He's employed someone to be his golf player. So he's joined a very exclusive golf club because it's cool to be part of that golf club. But he actually pays somebody to play for him. He's got a handicap of 2. He never picked up a club. Yeah? But that's the world we're in, folks. Now, why am I putting this up? Because I think this is funny. Because it is now. It wasn't at the time. It's bloody annoying. But we talk about personal brand. Your reputations online. Google your name. Your parents will be talking about you. Will they be putting you a tool of torture or a source of inspiration? Okay? Now, I'm going to share this. I've never shared it before. I never shared it. This was an article in the Telegraph newspaper. I was dead pleased. The Telegraph came to school. I didn't know it was that right-wing of paper. If I knew, I'd have banned it. But anyway, don't video that bit. Anyway, it turned around and it said, primary school league table, top head attacks pub quiz style. What's it? Schooling? What's going on? Schooling. Coalition reforms the cricket will produce a generation of pub quiz champions, but not highly rated, educated people, according to leading head. Daily Telegraph. Oh, I was in the Daily. My mum was proud. You know, we bought hundreds of them. Now, the point is, I was quite pleased with that. The picture could have been photoshopped a bit better, but never mind. And then, did you not know? I didn't know this. If you go on the website, okay, and you put this in, you know, there's like a thing called comments at the bottom, isn't there, where people can tweet comments about the article. And I'd never seen this. And somebody said, I've seen the comments on the article. I said, no. I said, you go and have a look. Wonderful, wonderful to hear a head teacher speaking sense for a change. Education is about fostering the spirit of inquiry, not about just knowing what 7 times 7 is. That's important. That is very important. But or who was king after Richard I? Yes, I know a couple of commas are missing. I thought, oh, brilliant. That was me dad. Anyway, the next. Look at this one. Look at this one. Why teach them to set the date of the Battle of Hastings when they haven't got Google? Did this man actually attend school himself? Parents pay good money to get their children away from teachers spouting Philistine drivel like this idiot. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool, isn't it? I was quite pleased with that. But can you see the battleground that we've got? So that's where the personal brand is. So finally, what is the role of the teacher? I love that picture because that was weaving magic. Yeah. All the other schools closed. Yeah, you have a flutter snow shut. Can't open. Of course you can open. And we just built snowmen and sledged all day. It was brilliant. They'll remember that forever. So to finish really, so the model that says learn while you're at school, while you're young, the skills that you'll apply during your lifetime is no longer tenable. The skills that you can learn when you're at school will no longer be applicable. They will be obsolete by the time you get to the workplace and need them, except for one skill. The only one really competitive skill is the skill of being able to learn. It is the skill of being able not to give the right answer to questions about what you were taught in school, but to make the right response to the situations that are outside the scope of what you were taught in school. We need to produce people who know how to act when they're faced with situations for which we were not specifically prepared. Now, there's a lot of food for thought there. A lot of food for thought. But we need to change. We need to change the way that we're thinking. And I'll finish with this slide here. I've started with some music and I'll finish with it. And the reason why, I look at U2 and I look about longevity. And people can throw whatever stick they want at U2. But when I saw U2 in Hanley in Stoke with the Alarm years ago, in about 1981 or something like that, on the war tour, and I saw raw power and energy that I'd not ever seen in my life. I saw passion, I saw great music. And when they released their last album on iTunes, they've morphed as it's gone on, and that's why they're still relevant, and that's why they're still one of the biggest bands in the world. Teaching has got to morph. It's got to change with the times. Yes, children need knowledge, but they need to have understanding, they need to be able to apply it, and they need to turn that into wisdom. Because the world they're going into is going to be so, so different. Why have I got Status Quo up there? I don't know, because they're my mum's favourite band, probably. But the reason I got Status Quo in there is another band, they're not my favourite band. I looked at their journey and I've read a lot about them, how they have changed and morphed as a group, but the way that they've marketed themselves over the years, very, very clever. Very, very clever. To make themselves still relevant and still being able to sell out 20,000 stadia today with all types of audience. And finally, the great Johnny Cash, who when he was 71 years of age, he released one of the most beautiful songs ever made. And it was a Nine Inch Nails song called Hurt. And that song, again, kept his relevance and showed, yeah, I was a great new musician when I was doing Ring of Fire and so forth. But he said the greatest piece of music I ever created was Hurt with the Nine Inch Nails. A very emotional, wonderful video. And he changed and morphed with time. So Johnny Cash, when he was downloading Hurt, it was downloaded by more 20 to 30-year-olds than plus 50-year-olds. And that's because he changed, and that's because he was relevant. And that's what we have to do as a teaching profession. Think, reflect, and make what we're doing relevant for our children today. And remember what I said at the beginning, you make the weather every single day. I hope you have a great day. Thank you ever so much for listening, and I'll see some of you pretty soon. Thank you very much.